people have been talking a lot about this. First is this: Iran reserving the right, as you said, to a preemptive strike against Israel and the U.S., saying that Iran would consider U.S. military facilities in Israel legitimate targets if it detects signs of an impending attack. Iran has exercised military capabilities even with this color revolution. Starlink was provided by Elon Musk to the rioters, and Iran essentially shut it down. You said the internet was blacked out, and it wasn't even just the internet in Iran. It was this Starlink system that many are saying could be Russian or Chinese technology that was provided over time that helped Iran do this. So, Professor Marandi, your reaction to Iran's potential response?
Well, don't underestimate Iranian technology. It doesn't have to necessarily be Chinese or Russian, or it can be a combination. But look, ultimately, Danny, the objective is war. So the demonization of Iran will continue. Mainstream media will continue. The likes of AOC and Trump, they'll all be creating a narrative of an evil Iran, right? Iran is evil. Why? Because it supports the Palestinian people. Iran supports the Venezuelan people. Iran supports the Cuban people. Iran supported the Bosnians. It supported the Southern Africans during apartheid, and the West supported the other side. So obviously Iran is a bad actor for them. But in any, or they, wherever we've been on, the different sides of almost all these all these conflicts. But the point is that if the United States attacks Iran, what happens then? Iran's capabilities today are far greater than they were 7 months ago for a host of reasons. One is that Iran knows, after the war, gained a comprehensive understanding of its strengths and weaknesses, and it began to rapidly work on them. And of course, its strengths are missiles and drones, but missiles in particular. And that's what defeated the Israeli regime. Steve Bannon was the first to say in public on his own show that during the last 3-4 days of the war, the Israeli regime was in trouble and they needed a ceasefire. And Trump got the ceasefire and saved Netanyahu. So Iran won the war. Iran today is far stronger. Secondly, Iran's capabilities to defeat Israel today are much greater, but more importantly, Iran's main capabilities are not even directed towards the Israeli regime. They're directed towards the United States. For 3 decades, the United States has, has been saying that all options are on the table. And then after 9/11, regardless of what happened, after 9/11, they took Afghanistan and Iraq. And back then it was the unipolar moment. They were in control, and to a large degree in Central Asia too. So Iran was surrounded. Since then, Iran began to develop defense capabilities against the United States. So they have all sorts of naval capabilities and capabilities on the land that are directed at the Persian Gulf and the Indian Ocean. Short-range missiles, medium-range missiles, hundreds of thousands of drones. These missiles and drones are much easier to move around and fire than the long-range ones directed towards the Israeli regime. So if the United States carries out a war, they will lose. And that will be the end of Trump's presidency. And the Iranians are going to be very tough, because this is not, this is it. If Trump wants to come in, then Iran is going to fight back as hard as it can. So it will be a defeat, but it will bring down the global economy, and in particular Western economies. So why would it happen if the consequences will be so dire? Because for the neocons and the Zionists, the only thing that matters is the Israeli regime. They're willing to sacrifice the US economy, the Western economies, the global economy. Everything is for the sake of Zionism. Everything is for the sake of the neocon project or projects. So while war doesn't make sense, And while they don't have a way to win the war, Iran is preparing for war. And by the way, Danny, Iran is not just one country. Iran's allies in Iraq are very powerful. And you know that Iran's allies won the election in Iraq. So you have, the Iran's allies in Iraq today are much stronger than they were just 1 year ago, 6 months ago. So the United States is not, it's not, and of course the United States has overextended itself. Has a naval armada off the coast of Venezuela. It's still engaging in war in Ukraine. It's clear that the CIA is deeply involved, and a lot of money is going from the United States through the CIA into Ukraine. There's no doubt about it. Maybe the military is not involved, but the CIA is deeply involved. And then you have the trade war. The United States, this is not the 1990s. Iran is far more capable today. The United States is in a lot of trouble, and it's in a lot of trouble at home. And then, but of course, you have Epstein, you have the internal issues. So there are a lot of things happening that could influence the way things go forward.
The United States is right now embroiled in a very delicate situation in Venezuela, what some see as a ravishing success by kidnapping President Nicolas Maduro, but then some see as a obvious failure with the government of Venezuela still intact. But there's this timing of it all, Professor Marandi. You said that the Israeli regime's interests are primary. Its preservation, what it needs is primary. Then why now? Why attempt? Because this is as close to the U.S. Going back to a possible war with Iran since the end of the 12-day war. Why now? Why was this color revolution attempt so important, and why is the United States, certain elements of it, even Donald Trump himself, considering a military strike?
It's not even a color revolution, but actually it does remind me about what happened in Kiev. Remember in 2014, these snipers were shooting both the police and the protesters, and these people in the different cities were doing the same thing. People, as I said, were being shot with small arms, with pistols from short range. So, yeah, there are some similarities. But I think the reason, Danny, is because Israel is in deep trouble, and so is Trump. The Israeli regime has lost its aura of legitimacy. It's despised across the world. As I said before on a previous occasion, if not more than once, the biggest defeat for the Israeli regime for the last 2 years and 2 months, 3 months, is that it's no longer seen as legitimate. That's the biggest thing. I mean, they've had tactical victories, they've had tactical defeats. They were unable to defeat Hezbollah no matter what the West claims. They're not able to take ground. They were defeated against Yemen with Americans. The only place where they had success is Syria, but Syria is as I said back then, if you recall, I said it's a black hole and it's not going to end well for anyone. Neither the partners who work together to undermine Syria, Netanyahu and Erdogan and so on. But in any case, I'll leave that aside. So the Israelis are in crisis. Netanyahu is in crisis. And Iran and the resistance are there. And then Trump has his own crises. I mean, you have, Epstein. You have the Epstein files. A good way to keep them out of the media is to invade Venezuela and to own the oil, and then to attack Iran, and then to have the media talk about Iran and all sorts of enemies abroad. Maduro killed millions of people. The Iranians killed whatever. So there are many reasons for this, but ultimately, the important issue is that this demonization of Iran, coming from different quarters, is very interesting. How it's taking place simultaneously. You see all of a sudden
Yeah.
a novelist, this Harry Potter woman. And
Oh,
what does
J.K.
she know about
Rowling.
Iran?
Yeah,
Yeah, Rowling.
she's
And
a
then
very political
you have,
person, a very political person. So I'm not surprised she's
yeah.
very much an
Well,
operative.
there's a lot of, yeah, but there's a lot of coordination. There's a lot of
Oh
things
yeah, so I mean,
happening behind the
I'm very
scenes.
much an operative.
AOC and all these people. And so you all, and then, it was just, and by the way, Danny, Mahsa Amini 3-4 years ago, it was the same story.
Yeah.
We discussed this before. First of all, as I said, there's this huge Persian language media apparatus in the West that costs billions of dollars a year. They have TV, as I've already explained it. When Mahsa Amini passed away, they immediately, BBC Persian and all these others, they said she was beaten to death. And then a lot of people came to the streets, larger than the economic protests, maybe a couple, like 10, maybe 20,000. I don't remember actually. I mean, I'm just, general. It may have been less, maybe more. But anyway, something like that. And then after 3 days, the footage came out. It showed that she was taken into the police station and she was fine. She wasn't holding her head. And then later she collapsed. And, we've discussed this before. And then it became clear she had a precondition. She had an operation when she was a child. Now, whether she was brought in for why she was brought into the police station, that's a different issue altogether.
Right.
That's not the point. That may have been a terrible thing to do, whatever. It doesn't. That's not the issue. Was that they said she was beaten to death, and then the protests, just like the economic protests now, were peaceful for a couple of days, and then you had the infiltration, and the riots and the violence. Back then, 70 or so police officers of the law were killed. This time, though, the violence was much more sophisticated, and they were much more violent. In a short period of time, they were, destroying all sorts of infrastructure and murdering people very swiftly. That it was in a very short time frame. So back then, it was the same thing. They were using a tragic event to infiltrate, to create chaos, to delegitimize, and to put more pressure on the country. This is the same thing. And, just like Venezuela, they'll say Maduro did this and and then all these pundits, they'll either say, yes, we should take him out, or no, he's evil, but let's not launch war. So they're all working on the same team. They're legitimizing war by repeating the propaganda, which is misinformation, which is combining truths and lies, sometimes just lies,
Right.
sometimes twisting truths.
Right.
But that's the whole thing. It doesn't matter if it's Cuba. You can be absolutely certain that when the day comes when they attack Cuba, everyone will say on these mainstream media that yes, the Cuban regime is dictatorial, it's evil, and so on, but we shouldn't have done it, or we should have done it. That's how it works.
Yep. Yeah, and there's always
But
this.
the real evil.
Continue. Sorry.
The real evil is those who are imposing sanctions, who are killing kids. What do sanctions do, Danny? They're there to prevent food from getting in, raising the cost of food. They're there to prevent supplies from getting in, to shut down factories so that people lose their jobs and families fall apart. The sanctions are to prevent medicine from getting in so that people who are, let's say, cancer patients and they're taking their medicine, suddenly it's no longer there, or the price has gone so high that they can't afford it, so they die. That is the objective. That is the objective of the Obamas and the Bushes and the Blairs and the and the Trumps, and all of them are the same. All of those people who pushed for sanctions, who supported sanctions, who today they say, oh, look at the Venezuelan economy, how it's collapsed. Look, you put your foot on their neck, on the Cubans. That's what they also did in Syria with success, ultimately. So these people, they're the ones killing people. And then they talk about human rights. They're the ones who carry out war and invasion. And then those who oppose them say, you're right, Maduro is evil, or so-and-so is evil, but you shouldn't have done it. It's a mistake, or it's wrong. That is the problem with the political establishment in the West. It is pro It is supremacist, just like Zionism. In a way, it's the same. It's supremacist. It gives them, they assume special privileges and rights. When they impose sanctions and kill people, it's for the right reasons, or at most it's a failed policy. They're not crimes when the West does it,
Right.
unless it comes in the history books.
Right.
They're willing to talk about 100 years ago, but not about today.
Donald Trump has threatened some kind of action, and what we've seen from the Trump administration so far is the intensification of sanctions, and they fail. So Venezuela they were mainly Trump administration sanctions, although the Obama administration, I believe, started them, but right before he left. Venezuela was growing at something like 6%. And it was the fastest growing economy in South America. The United States, through the CIA and the Delta Force, whoever, trying to instigate regime change. Do you see a similar kind of, maybe even a decapitation or some kind, they're talking about cyber attacks. Trump, for all of his hostile, chaotic, and outright, contradictory policies, he's been quite an aggressive neocon during his administration. Do you see something coming down the line?
The thing is that no one really knows what Trump thinks. I don't think even the people around him know, because he flip-flops on an hourly basis. But the assumption in Iran is always that there's going to be war. Whether it happens or not is irrelevant. The Iranians are preparing for war. If you want to prevent war, the best way to do it is to prepare for war. And when you have a sinister empire that's rapidly on the decline and lashing out to preserve its position, you have to be very careful. And especially when you have a foolish person like Trump, evil, sinister, but foolish, you have to be extra careful. So the Iranians are preparing themselves day and night. From my understanding, over the past 7 months, the Iranian armed forces and even the government have been working day and night to prepare themselves for the worst. And as I said, if there's war, they're going to hit back very, very hard. And they're much more prepared to do so now than before. I don't like war. I hate war. I've seen a lot of war. I've been shot. I have shrapnel. I have a shrapnel wound, and I survived 2 chemical attacks, chemicals that were given by the West to Saddam. I've been to Lebanon during the war. I've been to Syria many times. I went to Iraq during the war. I hate war, but I have no doubt that the Iranians will be steadfast and they will hit back very hard, and that will be the end of Trump's presidency. Decapitation is meaningless. Iran has a constitution. Iran is prepared for everything.
Right.
And by the way, how did decapitation go in Venezuela? There's no regime change.
Yeah.
My friend, I've been to Venezuela a few times. You have Venezuela friends too. Venezuela is in place. Don't believe the propaganda coming out of Washington. Trump owns the country. He decides this. Look at the people on the streets in Venezuela. They're not going to allow the United States to take over. And the acting president, her position is very clear. So I don't believe that Trump will be able to own Venezuela or steal or own Venezuelan oil. And I think that what Trump is doing is he's accelerating the decline of the United States faster than ever before.
Yeah, that definitely appears to be the case. And I wanted to ask you about what do you believe the regional situation is amid what has been happening in Iran and to Iran. I think your comparison to the Euromaidan, the so-called Maidan revolution, which was really just a proxy regime change operation, I think it's very good. I think all the elements are there. And I'm curious on what the regional response has been, especially given the fact of what you just said. Iran will hit back very hard, and that means countries like the UAE, Saudi, and others that house all this U.S. military hardware and personnel, they're the targets. Not so much the United States is thousands upon thousands of miles away with an ocean, many oceans actually separating. So What has been the regional response to this, if you have been able to catch it?
Well, first of all, countries across the region are increasingly fearful of the United States and the Israeli regime. After the airstrikes on Qatar or the drone strike, I'm not sure what it was ultimately, but also after the clear allegiance of the UAE to the Israeli project in the region. So you see even Saudi Arabia turning against the UAE. Right now, the Saudis and the UAE are literally at war on some fronts, in Yemen, for example, but also we see signs of further deterioration. So countries across the region are becoming more sensitive to the Israeli regime and to its allies like the United Arab Emirates. And by the way, the United Arab Emirates only has 1 million citizens. So, a few missiles, if they hit the right places, you can be sure that the regime will be gone. The same is true in Qatar. You have, like, I don't know, 9, 10 million in the Emirates, non-citizens. Many of them are indentured servants, semi-slaves. The same is true in Qatar. I mean, if things go wobbly, they'll be out, the regimes, swiftly. They may become non-Arab countries overnight. Who knows? But so these are not stable or powerful regimes. And so they're very worried about the behavior of the United States and the behavior of Netanyahu. They're tilting away. Turkey the same. Turkey, they destroyed the bunker standing between it and Israel, Netanyahu. On the one hand, Erdogan on the other, within the broader American project, Operation Timber Sycamore, oil and gas-rich countries in the Persian Gulf, especially Qatar. First, they took out Libya, then they went for Syria. Erdogan destroyed the country and killed hundreds of thousands of people with Qatar and Netanyahu and others. But what he did is that he destroyed this bunker between Turkey and Israel. And of course, the Americans are with Israelis. They're never going to stand with him. So now they're tilting away. And they're more concerned. So everyone is moving away from the Israeli regime, except for the UAE, and the Saudis have, as I said, slapped the UAE down. So this is another issue. This is not a good trend for the United States or the Israeli regime. But the United States, in its arrogance, they don't care. And these regimes, they're so bound to the West that they're not going to tilt away that far. But they are worried, and that's a sign that they're not in a strong position. The very fact that they're so worried shows that they're very vulnerable. So a U.S. attack on Iran could have consequences that go far beyond a few U.S. bases or a few Iranian bases. It could literally change the map on the Arabian Peninsula. And as I said, oil prices, gas prices will go through the roof. Sometimes some Americans say, well, we're independent of Iran when it comes to oil or the Persian Gulf. And I always tell them that, it's not important what the oil producers make. What's important is the price the consumer has to pay. So if the price of gasoline goes through the roof, or the price of energy and electricity and all that goes through the roof, then the economy it collapses. Yes, billionaires will make billions on high oil prices, $200 a barrel, $300 a barrel, but the economy will collapse.